Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Welcome to the Lights Out Podcast. I am the MMA detective, Mike Davis. Along with me, as always, Miguel Iturrate. And Miguel, this is our first episode with ADCC history. We're going to be talking about Royler Gracie and his historic run to 3 ADCC titles. And joining us is none other than Marcelo Tetel. Marcelo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me. How do you do, boys?
Marcelo, you are obviously a world-renowned judge from the country of Brazil, and you were also heavily involved not only with the ADCCs that we're going to be talking about, but your lineage goes back to about the 80s in terms of like performing and practicing Jiu-Jitsu. So Royler kind of comes on our radar in 1999 when he wins his first ADCC championship, but there's a pretty sturdy foundation that he's built prior to making his house through the ADCCs. Would you mind giving us a little bit of background pre-ADCC on Royler Gracie?
Royler came to your radar in 1999. And this was exactly the year that he retires from the Jiu-Jitsu competitions. This was the last year that he was competing in Jiu-Jitsu. But he got his black belt in 1982. I started Jiu-Jitsu in Carlson Gracie Academy in 1984.
Okay.
2 years later. And he was already a black belt 2 years ago that time. So it's unbelievable how long-lived this guy was in Jiu-Jitsu. For sure, the most long-lived competitor in Jiu-Jitsu ever. The history of Jiu-Jitsu never produced someone so long-lived like him competing at the adults division, not going to master division or something like this. When he fought his first world championship, he was already a master division. He was already 33 or 34, I don't remember. 31 years old already at that time. So he could compete in the masters, and he was at the adult division. But before this, I was talking to him recently, and we had a brief conversation. And I realized that Royler fought 10 different black belts only from my academy, from the Carlson Gracie lineage. He fought against 10 different black belts in 4 generations.
Wow.
The first guy who I recall and I remember he fought against was Mario Cupertino. Mario Cupertino is someone that nobody knows pretty much about him, but in 1984 they fought a war, and if you ask someone from our academy, from the black belt, who at that time was only blue belts in the competitions, if you ask them, which match do you would point as the biggest match you ever saw, they would say Mario Cupertino and Royler Gracie. It was a war. And just to give you a perspective about who Mario Cupertino was, Mario was the first. Everybody knows Murilo Bustamante, you know.
Bustamante, yeah.
He is a legend, former UFC champion, multiple times Jiu-Jitsu champion. Mario Cupertino was the first teacher that Murilo Bustamante had in Jiu-Jitsu. And Royler fought this guy. And then he fought Otávio Peixotinho. Otávio Peixotinho is, if you ask someone from this generation, Amaury Bittetti, Murilo Bustamante, Mário Sperri, you name it. Anyone from the Carlson Gracie team, the Golden Times, if you ask them, Ricardo de la Riva, Clóvis da Silva, if you ask them, these boys, who was the best guy in your team, they will say Otávio Peixotinho. So Otávio Peixoto is the hero of the heroes. You know, and Royler fought this guy in 86 or 85, I don't remember. You know, and then we came with only in the weight division we had Mário Cupertino, and then Otávio Peixoto, and then we have Cássio Cardoso, and then we start to talk about something little word for the family, because Royler was the first and the only one who fought against another member of the family, who happened to be Carlson Gracie Jr. They fought in 2 competitions, you know, and then he started to go up in weight divisions, and he fought the absolute division against Amaury Bittetti. He fought against Mário Sperri in the absolute division. Then he fought against Vinicius Cruz against in the feather division. So the guy was competing from 1982 to 1999, going through 4 different generations and winning most of the competitions. If you ask Carlson, I remember when Carlson Gracie was asked about who was the most competitive athlete of Jiu-Jitsu and the biggest competitor that Jiu-Jitsu had, he said Royler Gracie. And believe me, man, the rivalry between the academies, the Carlson Gracie Academy and the other Gracie academies, was really huge at that time, you know. And even Carlson Gracie recognized that Royler was the most long-lived and the biggest competitor that Jiu-Jitsu ever produced. So when he went to Abu Dhabi, he was already more than huge in Brazil. He already, at that point, he already had won 3 world championships. So he were already 3 times Jiu-Jitsu world champion. And in the end, in the middle of that year that he debuted in Abu Dhabi, he won the 4th title in Jiu-Jitsu. And in the end of the year, he fought in Japan against Sakuraba, who was way heavier than him. So this is just to give you a perspective of what Royler was at that point when he started in Abu Dhabi.
The ultimate competitor.
Definitely. I couldn't say differently, you know. Hands down, he was the most effective and competitive Jiu-Jitsu black belt ever.
Wow. So our story begins February 24th, 1999. So that's the ADCC. It's a 16-man bracket in Abu Dhabi. You were there. Am I correct, Marcelo?
Yes, I was there. And I was teaching Jiu-Jitsu in Abu Dhabi at that time.
Okay. And you, how long had you been living in Abu Dhabi?
I lived there for a while in Abu Dhabi, you know, and going back and forth, but I stayed there for more than a year, for way more than a year. And then I started to go to come to Brazil and go back to Abu Dhabi frequently. So
on the February 24th, 1999, obviously it's the beginning days of the ADCC in the tournament, you know, of what we know as it is today. And his first competitor was from Spain, Juan Baez. And then from there, he goes, his second competitor in the second round is Joao Roque. Was it Roque?
Not my Joe Hawk, John Hawk from
Not
Pedernera.
Leon.
Now that's
Exactly.
now that is like Juan Valles is still 1999. There were different levels of competition. He had an easy fight in the first round, but John Hawk is very, very serious shit.
Yeah, he's from Nova União. Yeah, Pedernera.
I don't know if you remember, Miguel, but that fight, that match was considered the best match of the competition.
It's kind of controversial.
They
Yeah,
they got the prize money for the best match for the competition.
Okay, that I don't remember, but that's a good fact. So, what do you remember about the fight? I recall very little.
It was a war, and it went to the overtime.
Judge's decision.
They didn't score the point during the match. Both of them fighting, and trying to score a point. It was the second match of both, so they were already they already warmed, and was used to the point strategy that they had, because the first 5 minutes doesn't count point in Abu Dhabi and at the ADCC, so everybody was not used to it, and they went straight ahead to the points, and was 10 minutes trying to score a point, and preventing the points, and because differently from the jiu-jitsu perspective, the consolidation in 3 seconds, and it's not instantly, so this is very different. And if you sweep someone and go to the back, or put the guys back on the ground, but if you don't keep him for 3 seconds, if he go on 4 to stand up, it's not point. And this is different in jiu-jitsu. So they went to a battle, and it was considered the best match of that competition.
It's somewhat controversial. Like the people from Pedernera's camp, I mean, they'll sign a petition stating that their guy won, and then the people on.
We will always have this kind of complaints when you have this these guys fighting,
and where's the referee?
Caliber.
What's his affiliate? It doesn't stop.
Yeah, the caliber of these guys will always, point to this kind of altercation and arguing about if it's complaints and everything. But I believe that at that point, Royler was more aggressive. João Roque, especially in the overtime, João Roque was more preventing from points than attacking. It was more counter-attacking.
I agree.
And, although this is a strategy, if he scored a point, he would win. But he didn't. And then they decided for the more aggressive guy. And Royler was more aggressive, for sure.
Royler was on his back most of the match.
I remember the physical matchup is interesting there because Royler's very flexible and long, and John Hawk is like a little power ball. Yeah, so but match of the competition, and in '99, that was from '98 to '99 was the biggest jump in level of competition that he ever had. That from the first year to the second year, just Royler Great, it was light years ahead, but it was still going to keep growing. So go ahead, Mike.
All right, so here, the third bout is from Guam, Spike 22, Melchior Manibusan, where Royler wins a decision there, points. And in the finals, he meets Soka, Alexandre De Fritas.
Yeah, the semifinal he won by points in 10 minutes.
It was a decision.
Yeah, he won by points. Sorry.
Yeah, and Melchior was with Ensign's group. He was with that group there. He finished 4th. He finished in the money. So that was an accomplishment for him there.
Yeah. And then he fought against Soka. Soka was by far the biggest opponent that Royler had in the ADCC, by far.
Let me get his road. So Takeusa Hirano was his first match. Vinny Maglanés was his second. Sasha Plavsky was his third bout.
Yeah.
And
the
De
third
Fritas
bout
is a black belt under, obviously, Carlson Gracie.
Yeah.
No,
the guy,
from Gracie Barra. He's from Gracie Barra.
Okay.
Vinny
He's
Magalhães.
from another.
Sasha Pavlovsky was a house fighter. He was Russian or something like this, but he lived in Abu Dhabi and was part of Abu Dhabi's team there as they, wanted to field a team, but he
was the sambo instructor in the same academy that I was teaching jiu-jitsu. He was teaching sambo.
Yeah, so he was the footlock guy and tough, like typical
Really
Russian
tough. Really tough. Soka won the match against him in 1998, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
And Soka was the
won
champion.
The championship. Yeah, in the
Yes.
first year, Soka was the
In
champion.
the first year.
But now, what I heard around this time is that Soka was always a guy who was going to finish second to Royler. That Royler had his number from back when, so he always went into those finals with Royler with the mind, like almost like he'd already been beaten. Is that accurate? Is that
the first match that they had was in 1994, in Jiu-Jitsu. So they were already competing in Jiu-Jitsu for a while, Royler won twice against him, against Soka, and they were pretty much, used to fight each other. Royler had the handicap; he was in advantage statistically, but if you ask Royler who was the biggest opponent he had in ADCC, he would say Soka, and just to be, at least reasonable and fair with Soka fought in the semifinals against Sasha, a battle of almost 30 minutes, was almost 30 minutes fighting against Sasha, and then he submitted Sasha after maybe 29 minutes of competition. And when Royler fought him, Royler went straight ahead for a footlock and won the match. Was maybe, I don't know, less than a minute in the final in 99.
There's no video on it, and it's listed as a guillotine at 33 seconds.
No, it was a footlock.
Is a footlock. Okay.
It was a footlock.
Yeah, like I said, there's no video at all. I looked everywhere, UFC Fight Pass, everywhere. I couldn't find it.
Yeah. And
that was the first championship. So it really, Manibusan, an ensign student, he came with ensign's team. I'm not sure how much of a student he was, but then the Joe Hawk and Soka, I mean, that's a real high level competition. Although it's all Brazilians, that was always the problem with early ADCC, is that it was a lot of Brazilians that were most ready to adapt to this. So, and Royler was the cream of the crop the first year.
Well, Miguel, you say it's mostly Brazilians. At this point in the United States, if there was 15 black belts, I'd be surprised that weren't Brazilian.
And probably most of the 15 black belts, 10 were Brazilians.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean. You're not even going to get a dozen black belts that are from Brazil. So naturally speaking, it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's just at this time, they were so far ahead of the curve. It took us probably another 4 or 5 years before, any other country could really kind of keep up or, send a competitor to, really plant their flag.
In the 65 weight division in 99, from the 16 competitors, 6 were Brazilians. We had one guy from the Carlson Gracie team, Marcelo Pache, Playmobil. We had Royler. We had João Roque. We have Draculino, Vinicius Magalhães. We had Soca, and we have Wellington Megaton, which happens to be the father of Mackenzie Dern.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 6 Brazilians.
So it's the second ADCC. Royler is crowned. He gets his first ADCC title, and he returns March 1st, 2000 for the 2000 ADCC. And his opening opponent is a guy that I've met twice. I kind of fanboyed out, I must admit. Barrett Yoshida. He started at Grappling Unlimited. At this time he was with Grappling Unlimited, but he started with Carlson Gracie and then switched to Ensign in Egan. So I was always interested on, if there was a little bad blood or whatnot, because he spent a lot of time in Helson's system.
Yeah, especially because Helson is Royler's brother,
Right.
And the loyalty at that time was really an issue. Everybody who was leaving an academy to other academy was considered what we called creonte, which is a
traitor.
Yes, a term in Portuguese, that Carlson Gracie invented. We had a soap opera in Brazil, and one guy in this soap opera was, a bad guy, all the time going this way, that way, and betraying people, saying something here and going to the other. And Carlson was, amazed about this guy, and everybody who was leaving an academy and going to another academy was considered creonte. And Bart Yoshida was considered the creonte, Helson was very upset. And of course, Helson spoke to Royler about it, but Royler was focused on the event, I don't think Royler was never, moved about passion or something like this during competitions. He was always cold and focused on competitions. But he fought against Barrett Yoshida. Was the first time that they faced each other, and Royler won. Royler won the whole competition again, And at that time, just to make an example about the Brazilians at that time, we had one in Royler, João Roque 2, Soca 3. We had Luciano 4, Reinaldo Ribeiro, who came from the ADCC trials in Brazil, 5, and Alexandre Pequeno, who was the king of Shoto in Japan, the 6th name. So we had again 6 Brazilians and 16 fighters. So,
and interestingly, this is the 3rd Abu Dhabi, and just a side note, but it's very interesting. In this weight class, a guy named Mika Malm appeared. Now, later on, the Scandinavians would show up for real with Joaquin Hansen and John Olav and good teams. But Mika Malm was a guy that apparently practiced in his backyard or in his garage, sent the tape and got into competition and was not a world-class competitor. This guy was still. So the next year when the Finns showed up, they actually mentioned him. They're like, that was embarrassing. We don't even know who that guy is. And that was the team of John Olavimo and Joaquin Hansen and those guys. They were embarrassed that first time because the first sight of a Finnish fighter from Finland, which is pretty prolific, is Mika Malm. That was a guy who got in because he sent the video.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and actually, at that time, I remember because we were involved with the competition all the time, Miguel. And you remember the responsibility and the goal of having the ADCC being global, and the representativity of someone from Finland would be nice for the event,
Yeah,
and
for sure. No, they it's not.
Technically, he was not the one who should be there, but
You know, the Abu Dhabi people tell a lot of stories about it, but the goal, especially in the early days, was just make it international. And, you know, keeping people like myself or yourself around is make sure it's a real competition. Make sure it's not, you know, fake fights or anything like that, which we eventually would have to figure out, you know, teams and things like that. But it was very serious, like, to grow it. And yeah, they were trying to get Finnish fighters would be great. And later on, they would hold their end of the bargain up. But yeah. Mika Malm, I wonder what Mika Malm is doing today.
I don't have a clue, man.
I'm working at Home Depot. Okay, so we've got Royler's second match was Hiro Wakabayashi. He was a real solid grappler. He beat guys like Jeff Curran, Imanari, Hiryoku Abe, Katsuya Toida, and he lost to Tokoro in a Zest grappling match. Very, very accomplished guy.
Yeah, the Japanese guys, you know, they always came to ADCC with a ground background. Very good, you know. They were very solid on the ground game. None of them was there, you know, blind, as some Europeans at that time, you know, like Miguel said previously, you know. I think Jiro was one solid competitor at that time.
Just over his head.
But you know, he was not, you know, someone who would really match Royler. Royler was, you know, fighting this event, and he was knowing that the first match would be really hard for him, and he would have his side of the brackets a little more easier after the first match, because
it doesn't ever wind up that way.
Yeah, you know, he was saying, he was believing that he would have a easier bracket until the finals, after beating Bart Yoshida, you know.
Another really interesting side note, I was looking this up. The first year that we talked about Royler in 99, I think one of the guys who was supposed to be in that bracket is Rumina Sato, but Sato went and was sick and stayed and did not compete in Abu Dhabi the first year he went. Now, in this year, in the one we're talking about now, he did compete a weight class up, but it was always very controversial that Sato went and claimed to have gotten sick and never competed that first year, or else that Japanese legend would have faced Royler Gracie, and that would have been amazing.
Yeah. We could have a very interesting match if they would face up.
So here, Royler wins.
Sato went up to face and let Wakabayashi in Royler's weight class. Sorry, Mike.
Okay. So here we go. Royler wins that match 6-0, and he goes on to a Matt Hume student who I don't think gets enough credit for their performance, and that's Anthony Hamlet.
Anthony was, you know,
he was a live dog.
The point is, you never would underestimate a guy from Matt Hume, especially regarding footlocks, you know. And Royler knew that the guy would come trying to trade footlocks all the time, and that could be the chance for him. And Royler was all the time playing on the top, very, very, you know, conservative in order to make the finals. Royler was not, at this point, Royler was not concerned about
looking,
you know, making someone tap or something like this. At that time, Royler was really concerned on winning strategically the competition. You know.
So Anthony Hamlet was very aggressive in this bout, and where I think his biggest mistake was, it's just a rule set. Royler, Miguel, you had told me a story about Royler being early to all of the rules meetings. Am I correct?
Yeah. Royler was a guy that always, you know, showed up at the rule meetings before, sat. I remember in Brazil, the Brazil show, the rule meeting was chaos because it's Brazil. You know, it was an hour and a half late, but he showed up at the original time and waited, sitting in the front row, him and his coach next to him, just sat and waited to hear the rules, to go. He had one question and then he left.
Yeah, he was always like
Total
this,
pro.
you know.
Yeah.
He was not only pro, but, you know, very strategic guy all the time, you know.
Yeah.
So he beats Anthony Hamlet by decision, who, man, Anthony had a hell of a run. I got to hand it to him. I think he performed much better than most people would have expected. And then in the finals, we have another rematch with Alexandre De Fritas. One more time.
Talk again. As I told you before, you know, you always gonna have these guys clashing down the road because they were at the time, they were the best guys in this weight division, grappling all around the road. And this time was different because Soca, you know, was really fresh, and they went to the decision, you know. Royler won the decision, you know.
Yes. So Soca's road to the finals was Takayumi Yano, Sasha Plavska, and Miguel, one of your favorite grapplers, Joey Gilbert. Joey was not happy with the referee decision at the end of their bout. Joey had thought he had won.
Yeah, I'm you know, I don't know. I couldn't say and couldn't decide differently. You know, I think Soca won. I don't remember exactly the bout, but I remember that there was some kind of interpretation of the rules from Joey Gilbert that was not correct, you know, and he was complaining about something that was not in the rule. I remember this, you know. I don't remember exactly what was, you know, but he thought that he won. I don't know exactly why.
He took his arm away from the referee. Wouldn't even let the referee hold his arm.
It's okay. You know, the road for Soca was definitely easier than for Royler. You know, Yano is a good grappler, but he was a guy with like zero strength, just technique and stuff. So he wasn't going to be too hard on him. Pavlovsky, he knew already. And Joey is a rugged match, but now you're in the semifinals. You're in the money matches there. And that's the difference between like $2,000 and 10,000, that fight. So you could tell why Joey would be upset. And Soca got to the finals that way. Different, the year before, Soca had the long match going into the finals. Royler finished him fast. Now, Royler had the long match against Hamlet, setting up. Soca had to think he had a chance this time.
I always thought that they had a chance, you know, and he was always fighting his heart out of the you know, the body all the time, you know, but couldn't, you know, he never won a match against Royler, you know, unfortunately, you know, because I think that the rivalry is built on sometime you win, sometime you lose, you know, and they fought so many times, and Soca was all the time, this is my time, and it never came, unfortunately for him, you know.
It's when you look at high-level wrestling, like even like Dave Schultz and Kenny Monday, Dave had Kenny's money or his number for many, many years. And then one day Kenny just turned the tables and Dave never beat him again. And those are two gold medalists. It's just, you know, you throw your hat in the ring enough times, you're going to get a win. And Soca just couldn't pull it off, huh?
Yeah, Soca wanted to be there. He's younger too. So, you know, I think that's what it was too. He was chasing that legend.
Soca started in Jiu-Jitsu in 1988. So Royler was already a black belt for 6 years. Just to give you an example. Just to give an example, again, we all know Marcelo Garcia, right? Marcelo Garcia is probably one of the best in the ADCC.
Like the Michael Jordan, yeah.
Yeah. This guy was born in 1983. When he was born, Royler was already a black belt for a year. So just to to make the perspective of who we were talking about.
Mhm.
And we are not talking about an old guy. We are talking about a consistent guy, a very competitive guy, a winner guy. I would, if we were talking about Royler here, how old he was fighting, how old he was competing and losing, okay, wouldn't be a problem, but the guy was fighting since 82 and was winning in 1989, 2000, 2001. Come on, man. Gotta be something,
In the
For
water.
sure. For
Gotta
sure.
be something.
So now he's a two-time champion after 2000.
Royler wins 2-0. He wins
Yeah.
2-0. He's a two-time champion. That is correct. That is correct. Pulling in April 11, 2001, Martin Brown is his first opponent. He's a black belt under Steve Oliver, and he comes from New Zealand.
Actually, I don't remember very much about this match, man. This one, my brain cells are still recovering from the fresh days.
I remember Martin Brown. I don't remember the fight.
Yeah, I don't really remember that much about him,
Royler wins by rear naked choke. He goes into Mike Cardoso, who is an Avalon Brothers Freestyle Fighting Academy student. And he wins by
qualifier winner.
He's what?
The qualifier winner.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Qualifier winner, and he makes it to the. Royler wins by ankle lock, and in the semifinals, he pulls into Robson Moura, another black belt under Andre Pederneiras.
Yes, Robson Moura was the winner of the Brazilian qualifier at that time.
Yeah.
Remember when we talked about Miguel was in Brazil when we did the 2001 qualifiers, right?
Yeah.
Remember that there was a small guy who was from the same team as Robson, Thiago Fernandes.
Yeah.
He was, the guy was a twister. The guy was really unbelievable. And he lost the competition to Robson Moura. And the guy came to me and said, look, there is still a chance to come and to go to ADCC. I said, look, if you keep competing, if you bring me the tapes, I'll send to the committee and we're gonna submit it to them and we'll see. But you have to keep active and frequently competing on grappling in order to have material. At that time we wouldn't judge everything about the jiu-jitsu competition with the gi. So I asked them to keep competing without the gi in grappling competitions. And he went to a competition in North Rio de Janeiro. He won the competition. And then he went to another one in North Rio de Janeiro, won the competition. And he called me, said, look, I have the tapes. I have 2 competitions that I competed down up here in North Rio. And as soon as I get to Rio de Janeiro, I will send you the tapes. And I said, okay, man, thank you. Unfortunately, the guy got caught in a crash car and he died.
Yeah.
Maybe,
He wasn't even 20.
yeah, was maybe 2-3 months before the competition, 2 or 3 months before.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll tell you
an upset.
And that kid, remember Marcelo Garcia lost the trials too. This kid had that type of potential to go.
Yes.
They invite him as the number 2 guy from the trials and he wins the whole thing there. I mean, that's what Marcelo Garcia did. And this guy had that level of potential to the point. If Marcelo wants to say something about what I'm about to say, he can. If not, he can maybe stay quiet. I got the impression that him and Robson Moura was an 80% match. That Robson Moura had been a 5-time Jiu-Jitsu world champion, black belt for a long time, and it was his turn to go to Abu Dhabi, not the 19-year-olds. But if they had gone all out, I don't know what would have happened. Robson Moura is phenomenal, but I don't know that they went 100%. I judged that fight. It's funny. The next day I met Hobson. I saw Hobson Mora, and he had taken off his wedding ring to fight in that fight, and he left it on the judge's table, and he left. So I gave it back to him the next day.
My God.
So I remember that. And I remember wondering about that fight because, hey, you know, they've rolled 100 times, and you can see when people have rolled 100 times, and the transitions. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful match. That's the only word to describe it. Actually, it's too beautiful.
Yeah. It happened to have both guys from the same academy. One was already a multiple-time world champion black belt, and the other one was only a purple belt. You know, they had their rules about this in the academy, you know, and I couldn't say differently, you know, Miguel. Although Hobson is a hell of a fighter, you know.
Oh yeah, he's actually too small for this Abu Dhabi class. I think he's like a weight class lower in Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, he was competing in Jiu-Jitsu. He was competing in Jiu-Jitsu in 125 weight division. Yeah.
So he's like
20 pounds less than this weight division.
It's a heroic effort.
Yeah. Yes,
so he pulls into the finals against Barrett Yoshida, who made it there by way of Gustavo Dantes from Crucifix Choke, Naoya Uematsu. Never gonna get that. He's out of Casey's factory.
He's fantastic.
I think he owns Nexus Gym right now as well. And he beats Soca Fritas.
Yes.
So Barrett Yoshida earned his way to that finals.
And he finally had the opportunity. He finally had the opportunity to rematch Royler. He was not. Yeah, he was not really happy with what happened the previous year. So Royler was very focused I think Royler was more strategical since the semifinal against Hobson Mora, you know, because when he fought Hobson Mora, he was fighting like with the rules book under the armpit, you know what I mean? He was all the time, you know, calculating the moves, you know, lasting maybe 20 seconds to the 5 minutes that would count points. He had a foot lock, pretty much, you know, locked, and you know, and he didn't went to the submission. He went to the 5 minutes, and then Hobson had to, you know, releasing the position. Hobson had to stay down, you know, and keep with and then Royler got the 2 points. You know, he was all the time during the first 5 minutes trying to adjusting the footlock, waiting to sweep from the footlock, not to get the submission. So Royler was very strategical at in that competition, you know, and
yeah,
also against. Sorry.
No. I apologize. I was just going to say, you mentioned it last year, the second year he won it, that he was very methodical, that he was already not coming really into submit and not worried about looking good. It was more important to win and you know, close your career out with money and the championships. So yes. I think that plays a factor against even Barrett as well in the finals.
Yeah, of course. If he would see, you know, a hole in the opponent's game, he would go for submission for sure. Royler, you know, we are talking about Royler. He would see you know, any kind of opportunity, he would go for submission, but he wouldn't take the risk to lose something just because he want to go like crazy for submissions. He was definitely going for, not for points, but for the win, you know, no matter what it costs.
Yeah.
You know, and then in the final against Barrett was the same situation. Barrett was like crazy, trying, you know, so many crazy and fancy positions from the guard, trying all the time, you know, footlocks and stuff. And Royler was all the time very solid, you know, preventing, for sure, preventing all the time, and mainly preventing his hands. If you see the match, you see that he wouldn't let Bart lock any position. He was all the time, you know, very focused and concerned about the hands all the time, where Bart is putting his hands, and he wasn't, and, you know, trying to be aggressive, to be progressive on the ground game in order to have the advantage.
Mike, what was the score on that fight?
I think Royler won by points, if I'm not mistaken. I think he passed the guard. I don't remember if counted points or not, but I remember he went to the side position, but I don't remember if he counted points, because,
correct me, but give me your impression on this part of the situation, because Ensign Inoue remembers it very similar to myself. And it is before the fight, everybody wanted to see Royler and Barrett. This was the program final. Barrett had wanted it, and he was working for it. And Barrett was doing very good. Barrett, in the finals, the points count from the very beginning in Abu Dhabi. And Barrett comes in and is facing Royler and sits and says, come on, come in my guard. And Royler tells him, you just gave me the match. It's 0-1. You'll never get a point on me, you know? And that basically set up a very methodical and careful match. But I think it points to what you said, the mindset of Royler. But Barrett gave away the match right in the very, like, Royler was almost shocked. He seemed surprised because he looked at him and he says to him, you just gave me the match.
Yeah, the point is, during the first 5 minutes, we wouldn't count any points, not even the negative points. And then when the 5 minutes came and Royler was very smart, you know, guy, and what he said, what he thought, I'm gonna stand up. The guy must come up, and when he comes up, I will go for him, and he will sit, you know. And it was exactly what happened, you know. And Barrett lost with -1. You know, I don't remember if it was -1 or if it was 4 points, because I don't remember if the guard passing counted, you know, because and Bart was so explosive, and I couldn't say that Bart would let Royler establish the position, like, you know, stabilize and make 3 seconds, you know. He was explosive enough to prevent that. I don't remember exactly what happened, but, you know, for sure Royler had this competition again, and it was in a very methodical way.
Yeah, the first 3-time champion of Abu Dhabi was Royler Gracie. Another, you know, feather in his cap and an accolade. Now, we're going to close out here. You know, I consider the greatest moment in Abu Dhabi history Eddie Bravo's submission of Royler Gracie. And we're going to begin episode 2 and 3. We'll cover that. But I felt the reason it was such a big moment is because of who Royler was. So we had to start with Royler. And I thank you very much for joining us, Tetel. Mike?
Well, hold up, Miguel. Hold up.
Right.
So, Marcelo, why don't you encapsulate what Royler is to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community before we close out?
I would, you know, follow Carlson Gracie's definition of Royler, you know. He's the most long-lived and the most effective competitor that Jiu-Jitsu ever produced, you know. That's it.
It's such a bold statement. Like what you said right there it's a bold statement, but you can't argue against it.
Yeah.
You know, you can't argue against it.
The stats are there just to prove what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah.
I gave you guys here just some examples of this. You know, Marcelo Garcia was not even born when he started to compete in Jiu-Jitsu as a black belt. Murilo Bustamante, first Jiu-Jitsu teacher, was one of the competitions that the guy had. You know, the guy fought 10 guys from 4 different, not only for the Carlson Gracie team, he fought 10 guys from 4 different generations. That's it, you know. And another statistics about ADCC, if I'm not mistaken, we never had in the 65 weight division other country than Brazil winning this competition. I don't remember that we could ever had someone from different country. So the legacy of Royler was passed, you know,
Passed down.
Wow.
passed down for
So,
the other
you know,
guys.
as Miguel had stated, that the Eddie Bravo match was so huge because of the legacy that Royler built over a decade of competing. It's just an incredible competitor, the penultimate competitor. Marcelo Tetel, you are a true gentleman, and we're going to be seeing you for future episodes. Thank you so much for joining
No
us.
problem. Thank you very much, man. Thank you very
my
much for
friend.
being here with you guys. Thank you, brother.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.